Namaskar. In this edition of Right Angle, I would like to discuss one of the important, decisions which has got geopolitical dimensions that is about to be taken at the sidelines of the ongoing G20 summit here in Delhi. I think this decision will be taken either late this evening or tomorrow, or for that matter, even if it is not taken today or tomorrow, it may take few more days. The point is that it is about to be taken, and this has got huge geopolitical significance. On the sidelines of very important international meets, sometime when important or leading world leaders meet in their bilateral talks or say multilateral talks, some very important decisions having global significance are usually taken, and so it is not surprising that this is also going to be taken here on the sidelines of the G20 summit. But what that decision is? That decision is on a possible infrastructural deal involving railways and ports, and it is to be signed by India, United States, the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. Though the blueprint of this deal through a MOU, that is Memorandum of Understanding, is not exactly known. As I speak to you, it will be linking when fructified, it will be linking India with the Middle Eastern, what we call the West Asian countries, through railways, ports, in the first phase. And then the idea of this proposed big trade route is that from Indian ports, commodities could be shipped to the UAE, and from there with the rails to Saudi Arabia and Israel, and from their ports to Europe, particularly Greece, could be reached again by ships. So in that sense, there will be a connectivity between India and Europe. Though Israel and Greece, you may be remembering that when Prime Minister was a few days ago visiting, or rather participated in the BRICS summit in Johannesburg in South Africa, on his return visit, he came via Greece. In fact, he was the first Prime Minister, Indian Prime Minister in 40 years to have visited Greece. And I am quite sure in that visit they must have discussed. The Prime Minister must have discussed with his Greek counterpart. So the point is that both Israel and Greece have been sounded about this deal, and according to diplomatic sources, there has been a very positive response from them. But the leaders of the rest four, that means Modi, US President Joe Biden, UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed, and Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince. In fact, he is the most powerful leader of Saudi Arabia today. His name is Mohammed bin Salman. They all are present in Delhi, and actually, if at all, they are the ones who are, or rather, at their instruction, the officials representing these four countries may be concluding that MOU, or they will be there will be a joint declaration on this deal. And this MOU could be inked, and rather when it is inked, it would be exploring, as I said, shipping and rail transportation that will enable the flow of commerce, energy, and data from here in India across the Middle East to Europe. And who said this? This was said by John Feiner, and who is the US Deputy National Security Advisor, who has accompanied President Biden in his trip to India. And subsequently he added, I think he was talking to the press yesterday. Subsequently he added that first it is not just the railway project, it is the shipping and railway project, and it is important for people to understand how expansive, ambitious and ground breaking deal it will be. So the point is, the point here is this corridor, I mean this trade corridor, that means from India till Europe, or rather to in the first phase to Saudi Arabia and Israel, will enable the flow of commerce, energy and data. Then, or rather I would say, in fact, it is being projected to be a green digital bridge across continents and civilizations. Ultimately, I mean that is what the officials are saying. It is green means they will be talking of this alternate energy, as you know, that these 4 countries also are interested in setting up of some nuclear plants in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is also like India, like US, considering that concerns over the climate deterioration, are thinking of devising or going for the alternate energy. And in this sense, it may rather sound strange, but it is true that Saudi Arabia is interested in setting up some nuclear plants, to which actually the Israel has strongest objection. But as I will be arguing subsequently, all these 4 countries have been taken, or rather discussed this aspect, and the suspicions and fears have been eliminated. And let me tell you that this idea of this corridor has not come all of a sudden. In fact, senior officials of the 4 countries have been working on it for months, while things were smooth during the preparatory talks among the Indian, American, UAE and Israeli officials. The big challenge actually was to make Saudi Arabia agree to it, in the sense that these 4 countries like India, Israel, United Arab Emirates, that UAE and US, you know that they are the member of the so-called I2U2, India, Israel, UAE, USA. And some actually describe this ITU2 as the Middle Eastern Quad. This, like we have got Quad in this part of Indo-Pacific, India, Australia, Japan and the US. So they say that is the West Asian or rather the Middle Eastern Quad, according to some observers. And this also has been floated with a clear focus on countering the Chinese influence. So the agreement among these countries, that means ITU2 countries, was relatively easy as far as this proposed trade corridor is concerned. But as I said, Saudi Arabia was little problematic in the sense that or rather let me put it this way, there are two major problems. For one, things have not been very cordial between Biden and the Saudi Crown Prince at a personal level. In fact, in his electioneering, Biden had made very serious remarks about the Saudi Crown Prince because there was a huge controversy that in the Saudi embassy in Turkey, some very leading dissident, I think, who had been given some American green card or citizenship, I exactly don't remember, but he's a Saudi national and is a very prominent journalist, was killed in the Saudi embassy in Turkey, and that had become a quite rather a huge diplomatic issue between these two countries, and there were very nasty remarks that were exchanged between then the presidential candidate Biden and this Saudi Crown Prince, and there were problems at that level. So this was one of the reasons. In fact, as I'll be arguing subsequently, this also is one of the most important outcomes of this G20, as I said on the sidelines, is that maybe as I am talking and sharing my thoughts with you, maybe Biden and the Saudi Crown Prince are shaking hands, and they may be talking something which is a big thing, and that has been or rather that is going to be possible because of Modi's intervention. So that also was one reason, and the second reason problematic was that how Saudi Arabia would come, in the sense that Saudi Arabia has got very, very friendly relations with China at the moment, though I mean its relations with India are growing, but China is also owing Saudi Arabia a great deal. As you know, some time back they said that it was a great diplomatic victory of China in this part of the world, in the sense that it had facilitated some sort of understanding or agreement between two hitherto what they call eternal enemies in Middle East, that is Saudi Arabia on the one hand and Iran on the other, one representing the Sunni Muslims of the world and one proclaiming to be the leader of the Shia Muslims in the world, that means Iran. And there are some other regions also that historically there have been great animosities between Saudi Arabia and Iran as far as their respective claims to be the leaders of the Islamic world. So that was a major thing, and China succeeded, or rather China did facilitate in bringing about that rapprochement between these two countries, which people say was a great globally global diplomatic development. So that being the case, this very bridge idea involving the US, and as I will be explaining later how it really is a competing idea against China's Belt and Road Initiative, was a little problematic. So the point is that despite this, ultimately it seems the very fact that they are going to agree, all the four, if it is now possible, here people say that our national security advisor Ajit Doval has played a great role. In fact, in recent months, he had repeatedly met bilaterally and at multilateral events with his counterparts like Jake Sullivan, the NSA of the US, then Sheikh Tahnoon bin Zayed Al Nahyan, I think that is what his name is. He is the NSA of the UAE, and then Musaid Ali Ivan, I think he is the NSA of Saudi Arabia. And Doval had also talked to the Saudi Crown Prince when he had gone there a few months back. I think he had gone there in May, and did describe this idea of having a what he said, the shared vision of more secure and prosperous Middle East region, interconnected with India on the one hand and the rest of the world on the other. And it may be also noted here that America was also very keen to have this idea being fructified ever since July 14, 2022, when these I2 and U2 heads, that means Biden, Modi, and then Israeli Prime Minister and UAE President, they all had meeting, all had held a summit meeting. That is a virtual summit last year. And they had made it abundantly clear that they would aim at harnessing, and I am quoting, the vibrancy of our societies and what was said, the entrepreneurial spirit to tackle some of the greatest challenges confronting with the world, with particular focus on joint investments and new initiatives in water, energy, transportation, space, health, and food security. In fact, subsequently they did talk of this food security, and towards which India did play a big role. It placed some quantity of things, and it did help the food situation, availability, which was affected a great deal, as you know, because of the Ukraine war and the subsequent sanctions on Russia, and then in the Ukraine. And you should remember that Russia and Ukraine put together, I think, produce world's nearly 50 to 60% of the food, wheat and other things, and that export has been badly affected. So in this sense, this India's role and these I2, U2 countries talk of food security and working on it was a big development. But what I want to bring to your attention, or rather what I want to highlight here, is that they also had talked of transport, quote unquote, to be one of the important goal. In fact, their national security advisor Sullivan, he had made it clear subsequently in a speech at Washington Institute of Near East Policy that there is a long speech. The important point that he had made is this, that these ITU2 countries are going forward to build an important infrastructure project that would connect South Asia to the Middle East. And he also had talked subsequently to the US, so it will be, as I said, that the second phase connecting Europe I think the America wants that through Europe it can be connected even to the US. So they are talked of South Asia, Middle East, Europe, and then US, so that it would be a great development, global infrastructural development. And he had said that a more integrated and interconnected Middle East will be empowering our allies, partners, and advance regional peace and prosperity. That would be also reducing the resource demands on the US in this region over the long term, without sacrificing America's fundamental interests. So the point is that it would be a win-win situation, or beneficial to all, not only these 4 countries, but also to the rest of the world. In fact, even the Israeli Prime Minister had more or less talked subsequently. I think he had given an interview in some major Israeli publication, was it Jerusalem Post perhaps, that there will be how he is interested in connecting railway links between his country and Saudi Arabia. Incidentally, at the moment, there is no diplomatic relations between the two, but when these talks were going on, and everybody thought that it will be materializing, like we are saying that it may materialize this evening, or it might have materialized by now as I am talking to you. There will be some fallout in the sense, the positive fallout in the sense that it would be leading to some reconciliation between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So this idea, this idea actually that way is having, or rather is going to have great significance, as I pointed out at the very beginning. And this as I said, that it is going to be beneficial to all. It's a win-win situation. And as far as the Indian partnership in this project is concerned, it is going to help our country achieve better connectivity, and it will have also cheaper transport cost within the region where a large number of Indian immigrants go to work. I'm talking of West Asia or the Middle East, where India's from where India also, or rather from where India imports bulk of its oil. It will also boost India's reputation as a global builder of infrastructure, because India wants to build a global image as a highly competent in constructing the railway routes. Significantly, therefore, you may note that when Saudi Crown Prince Salman arrived in Delhi yesterday, he was received at the airport by India's railway minister Ashwini Vaishnav. Why it was diplomatically significant? Because diplomatic protocols are there, and sometimes the symbolism there when one talks of principle also indicate the health of the relationship between or rather among countries, because he was received by Ashwini Vaishnav in sharp contrast with the cases of other heads of the state and government attending the G20 summit, because each of them, including President Biden, I am repeating, including President Biden, was received by Indian ministers of state. But Vaishnav is a senior minister of the cabinet, rank in Modi's council of ministers. So remember that the Saudi Crown Prince was received at the airport by a cabinet minister, whereas even in the President Biden was received by a, of course, like other also heads of states and government, by ministers of state rank. So this is significant. That means every attempt was made to keep the Saudi Crown Prince in good humor, in the sense that they all were keen that he would not be feeling something otherwise, and he must sign this proposed MOU that we are discussing. Another important thing, I think that may not be exactly related to this, but the point is that one can also argue that unlike the other world leaders, the Saudi Crown Prince is converting his visit to Delhi as a state visit. That means he would be staying back on a Sunday to hold bilateral discussions, and interestingly, it is a standalone visit. Standalone visit means he is coming from Saudi Arabia to India and will be back. And initially, when his plan itinerary was being prepared, the basic idea was that he would be coming first to Pakistan, and he would be stopping over for few hours. We will be talking to Pakistani leaders. As you know, Saudi Arabia is a very big donor, and you know that as the members of the Islamic world has always benefited Pakistan economically the most. And as you know that some of the vital installations and the security duties there in Saudi Arabia are taken care of by the Pakistani armed forces. So it's very important. So the very fact that he cancelled that plan and came straight to India and did not link Pakistan on this visit is also equally significant. That means how much India is assuming importance in Saudi Arabian eyes can be evident from this, and this despite the fact the critics of our Prime Minister have not made any stone unturned to say that look, Modi is so anti-Muslims. Obviously that is not reflected in our relationship with Saudi Arabia, or for that matter or any other important country in the Middle East. In fact, never before in our diplomatic history as an independent country, the relations between India and the West Asian or Middle Eastern countries have been as good as it has been in the last 9 years after Modi assumed office. It may appear strange, but actually it is true. That's another thing. On another occasion we will be discussing about that. But coming back to the proposed this trade corridor, I'll say that it has two major geopolitical implications. One is that if it gains priority, it is bad news for the future of the alternate route of the international north-south transport corridor. It is called INSTC. That is a multimodal transportation network connecting India and then the Persian Gulf. That means Iran particularly, and through Iran to Russia, and then from Russia to northern Europe. So that is called this north-south corridor, and it was. But what has happened is that, and India is highly committed to it. In fact, our foreign minister over few years had gone and visited this region, all these countries. But what has happened now is that apart from India, two most important countries of this north-south route is happen to be Russia and Iran. In fact, they are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of this project, because what has happened is that they are finding it very difficult to implement this scheme because of the financial problems. And do you know that when I am talking of the financial problems, it is basically because of the economic sanctions that have been imposed on them. So, though it will be the shortest trade route connecting India with Russia, and because it is said to be 30% cheaper, 40% shorter. I think normal or rather traditional Suez Canal route now takes around 45 days from India to Europe. That would be coming down to 23 or 24 days. But as things are not happening because of these things are not being implemented properly. So this proposed this trade corridor by EU2 countries plus in Saudi Arabia is going to emerge as more implementable idea. So that means the geopolitical significance in the sense that this actually is not as I said, good news for the north-south corridor. That scheme which actually, if I recall, it was planned on September 12, 2000 in St. Petersburg in Russia, and of this corridor, the other members also, they were interested, or the other parties to this north-south thing. They are Turkey, Oman, Syria, Belarus, Ukraine, then of course Central Asian nations of Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, then Armenia and Azerbaijan. So many countries were involved in the north-south route. But I think this deal that we are now talking of and is certainly not good news for that proposal. And what is the second geopolitical fallout or the implication? That this India-Middle East transport corridor is an alternate plan, and I think this is very, very important to Chinese President Xi Jinping's highly ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. And as you know, both India and the US have rejected this BRI consistently ever since Xi floated this idea sometime, I think in 2013 or 14. Because what India of course has opposed it because of two grounds. Mainly some of its so-called BRI route goes through this Pak occupied Kashmir and then to Pakistan, and the very fact that it goes through some occupied territory, our territory, we are totally opposed to it. That is number one. And number two is that it will be increasingly seen this in the name of BRI, which China is investing a hell of a lot of money among the countries that are parties to it. It is putting them in deep debt. That's why Malaysia withdrew it. What has happened to Sri Lanka. It has happened to many African countries, and in fact the Pakistanis are also not realizing, rather have started realizing. In fact, Imran Khan, when he was Prime Minister or even before he became the Prime Minister, had made it a huge political issue in Pakistan that we are falling into this debt trap of China. So obviously this looks more promising in the sense that President Biden has indicated that the USA would be happy to be an alternate partner and investor in this part of the world, in the sense that forget about Chinese thing. If the American starts investigating, obviously the countries are not going to be in the debt trap, and that will be beneficial to all, and it is an alternate vision. And the other component in Biden's strategy is that it will be connecting his Indo-Pacific and transatlantic strategies. As you know, in the American diplomatic circles, one of the criticisms is this, that this very idea of Biden emphasizing, Biden or before that matter even President Trump. In fact, now there is a bipartisan consensus there as far as the Congress and the executive is concerned, that too much emphasis there means we are neglecting our transatlantic, that means NATO allies, that means Europe. But as I said, and as I quoted some time back, the American NSA saying that this proposed deal that India and Middle East, that ITU2 plus countries deal subsequently will be a link, or rather connecting America's Indo-Pacific and transatlantic policies. So it will be a great diplomatic victory for President Biden, and it is going to be a great diplomatic victory for Modi here in India. And as you know, both Modi and Biden are going to face elections next year. So it has, as I said, that it is this proposed thing right from the very beginning. I made it pretty clear, has got great global strategic significance. Thank you very much.